A teen turns jealousy into a murderous game, and the pack mentality takes hold.
We see people in groups doing things that they would never do individually.
These are deadly women, all seduced by the dark thrill of a kill. Madison County, Indiana, January 11, 1992. Don Foley is about to make a terrible discovery along the roadside. A farmer and war veteran, he's used to seeing death and suffering.
I've seen dead animals. I was in the service. I've seen people burnt and stuff, so I'd seen it before, but nothing like that. I thought it was a mannequin to start with, or one of them rubber dolls you hear about. She was burnt real bad from here up.
The young girl's body had been sexually assaulted, tortured, burned. The victim, 12-year-old Shonda Sharer. Even those used to brutal slayings, like former FBI profiler Candace DeLong, were shocked by this crime.
For all the years I've been involved in working with people that committed murder as a psychiatric nurse to my work as an FBI agent, this is one of the most disturbing cases I've ever studied.
For Candace DeLong, it's a tragic case of peer pressure gone terribly wrong, turning teenagers into terrifying killers. Shonda Sharer's murderer is not one, but 4 school-age girls on the ultimate thrill kill.
Everybody was shocked when we learned the age of the girls involved. I think I know that's what surprised me more than anything else.
Indiana State Police Detective Steve Henry headed up the investigation.
For some reason, the chemistry was right that night between these 4 girls for this to occur.
Alone, young girls rarely commit homicides. But group pressures can override an individual's instinct for caution.
We see people in groups doing things that they would never do individually. Some of these violent attacks by a group against one person, they take on like a pack mentality. And one person is always the leader, and the others are followers.
It started 3 months before, outside a school dance. Amanda Heverin is with her new friend, Shonda Sharer.
I met her in junior high. I was in 8th grade, she was in 7th. We became very, very close. We became really good friends.
But Amanda's ex-girlfriend is brooding. 16-year-old Melinda Lovelace.
Jealousy is probably the most common motivator of murder, period.
She had tried to beat Shana up at a dance. I got between them and told Shana to run.
The relationships that they get in at that age may seem trivial, but that's their life's breath. That's their world. If somebody interferes with those relationships, things can get pretty rough.
Melinda begins writing letters to Amanda. Frightening letters wishing Shonda dead.
Well, obviously, I didn't think she was capable of murder. I thought maybe she'd just, try to scare her, beat her up or something. That's the Melinda that I knew. I didn't know her as being a violent person.
she convinces some friends. Tony Lawrence, Hope Rippey, and Lori Tackett to take a joyride to Shonda's house. None of the three had ever met Shonda.
It's easier to do something when you've got a group of people. You can share the responsibility, share the guilt, share the blame.
Melinda has assembled her pack. The only question now, how far will they go?
There is no doubt in my mind that Melinda intended to cause the death of Shanda.
Melinda brings a knife, ostensibly to scare Shonda.
The pack mentality can take on a life of its own. The leader determines what's going to happen, and the other members of the group, sometimes they'll go along with it to impress the leader, and sometimes they go along with it because they're afraid of going against the leader.
The plan was to lure Shonda into the car, that her good friend Amanda was waiting for her.
There were not mean-looking, dirty child molesters. There were two children that looked like her that were not threatening, and they said, just walk 25 feet and talk to her. And that's what she did. And they had her.
I think when the knife was first put to her throat, some of the followers just thought this was kind of a game, that they really had no idea it was going to end where it did.
It would be the last day Shonda's mom, Jackie, ever saw her daughter.
Shanda had never been anywhere that we didn't know where she was or who she was with. Shanda wasn't allowed to go anybody's house that I didn't call the parents, that I didn't go there. I was very, very protective.
Shonda is driven to the countryside, then assaulted. Led by Melinda, 17-year-old Lori Tackett joins in.
Lori took the most active role in helping Melinda. And the other two girls, I think, were just kind of going along, something to do on a Saturday night. There's really no indication that they knew what was going to happen.
After the attack, Shonda is tossed in the trunk. Before dawn, things will only get worse. In the dark morning hours, in the winter of 1992, one of the Midwest's most horrific crimes is playing out. 12-year-old Shonda Sharer has been lured into a car, assaulted, and tied up. Her teenage captors appear to be on a thrill kill.
Shut up.
It really isn't that difficult to kill someone quickly if you have a knife and they are disabled. They can't run away from you. And yet, we didn't see that in this crime. We saw a very long, drawn-out, horrible torture.
Shonda suffers unimaginable abuse. Hope Rippey sprays window cleaner as the assault ends.
One could say Hope really didn't want to deal her a fatal blow, but felt compelled to do something to make it look like she was into the murder.
15-year-old Tony Lawrence is the only one to resist.
I can only imagine that she was terrified. If they did that to her, they can do that to me. Oftentimes they become paralyzed with fear. And yet she was able to say, I'm not going to be a part of this, I'm not going to look, I'm not going to do anything. But she must have been terrified.
Shonda's ordeal has continued for 8 hours. At dawn, her tormentors finally put an end to it.
Well, I think these girls used gasoline because partly they didn't know what they were doing. I think if they'd found some big heavy boulders, they would have dropped them on her body. It was just whatever was convenient, whatever popped into their mind.
The way it was told to me, they drove away and turned around and came back past the body thinking that she would be burned completely up and there would be no trace of her, and she was still there. So Melinda set her on fire again. And then we went to McDonald's and had breakfast.
But Shonda wasn't dead.
They identified soot in her airways, which means at some point she had actually inhaled or was breathing in the fumes, the fire, the burning contents that were all around her. This indicates to all forensic pathologists that she was conscious.
They didn't know how to tell me how she had died, and I saw it on television, that she'd been burned alive. I didn't know that.
Later that day, Melinda confesses to ex-girlfriend Amanda Hevron.
Amanda.
She told me everything that had happened. I thought it was a joke, because I just can't fathom that 4 girls would do this to another human being. This is, this is stuff you wouldn't even do to an animal,
In Melinda's mind, it might have been simple. Remove the competition, and then you'll be number 1 again. She also might have been telling her partly as, look what I can do. And I'll do it to you if you don't come back to me. We don't know.
81 clear. 8814 clear.
That evening, Toni Lawrence, the only one of the 4 who refused to participate, turns herself in and tells police everything.
8814 clear.
Before the night is out, Shonda's killers are behind bars. Shonda's death shatters her family.
She weighed 77 pounds.
In 91. The year before, that was the year before she died.
There would be another victim, Shonda's father.
Steve could not have been a prouder father. Shonda was his life. From the day that she died, he did everything he could to kill himself besides putting a gun to his head. And finally, he drank himself to death, and he died at 53.
What could motivate such a crime? Jealousy? Pack behavior? Or something else, made possible by other people not even on trial? It's alleged most of the girls came from troubled or abusive homes.
I think every horrible thing that happened to each one of those girls, everything they had held in all their life, they took it out on my child. I think that's what they were doing. I think they just all exploded that night.
Court testimony revealed Melinda had a violent father. who abused her mother, her sisters, and a cousin for years.
I think the outrageous home life that Melinda was subjected to at the hands of her father and the mother who didn't protect her from that played a tremendous role in why she eventually grew up to be a murderer.
None of these girls were born murderers. They weren't born to murder children. They weren't born to be in prison. This is what we do as parents. We mold our children into what they are.
All 4 were tried as adults and pled guilty. Tony Lawrence, the least involved, was sentenced to 20 years, but was released in 2000. Accomplice Hope Rippey was sentenced to 60 years, but released early in 2006. Still serving their 60-year sentences in Indiana State Women's Prison, Lori Tackett and Melinda Loveless, the teenager whose violent past and catastrophic jealousy created a thrill killer.
Melinda Loveless is the closest thing you will ever look at and know what the devil is. Her eyes are empty. There's nothing inside of her.